There are many ways to think about a chord progression or a piece of music, but some of the most common ways that we break down harmony or analyze chords don't really help us play any better solos. In this video, I'm going to talk about how just assigning a scale to a chord is not really helping you improvise better, and I'm also going to cover another approach that if you start working on that, then you can really improve your solo lines and your improvisations quite a lot. My name is Larsen, learn jazz, make music. I have often come across students who spend a lot of energy trying to break down which scale goes with which chord. And of course, if you're looking at phone apps or maybe old Aebersold books, then that's also how they break down chord progressions. Obviously, it's very nice to have a pool of notes that you can use when you're improvising. And a scale is really practical. You probably already practiced it and you know what it looks like on the neck and you can play it. But at the same time, 7 notes doesn't really tell you what something sounds like. It's not a really detailed picture of what is happening in the song at that point. And certainly if you have to think about what scale that you have to use while you're trying to improvise, then it's never gonna sound any good. To give you an example of this, a lot of pieces actually use the same 7 notes. They're the same scale for most of the piece. If we take the first 4 bars of Autumn Leaves, that would be C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7 to E flat major 7. And of course, if we take sort of the Aebersold way of playing those scales, we get these. But really, those are the same notes. So we're actually playing the same scale, we're just starting in different places. And the only sort of different information we have from chord to chord is that we're starting somewhere else. And you're not gonna be starting your solo lines on the root every time. So you need to know some other things if you wanna have some information that you can really use for something when you're soloing and you wanna understand more about what is happening with the chord progression than what scale fits on this chord. First, let's just look at what you need to know, how you need to understand the chords, and then a simple way of using this when you're soloing. And then later in the video, I can get into a more powerful soloing concept that you definitely want to add to your list of skills. The overview that you want to have is that you want to know the notes in the chords, and you want to have a really strong, really flexible overview of that. So that means that you want to know if you're in this bar, then what are the notes in this bar? And also, what are the notes in the next bar? Because harmony is something that moves. Harmony pulls forward and moves all the time. And that means that you want to understand what notes are in this chord and where they're going in the next chord. And this is true especially for functional harmony, which moves like this, but also when you're improvising over modal harmony that is sort of supposed to stand still. When you're changing chord, you still need to treat it as tonal harmony to make a smooth, logical transition. In this video, I'm going to use the first part of I Remember You as an example. And I'm doing this because that's a good song if you want to demonstrate how this works. You can clearly hear and see how it all works and how it fits together. And also just because it's a great song. It's a really great song. You want to have it in your repertoire, so go check it out. The overview that I think you should have if we look at this song is that the first chord is an F major 7 and the second chord is a B diminished with F in the bass. So the notes that we have in the first chord are F, A, C and E. And in the second chord we have a B diminished, so that's B, D, F and A flat. But you kind of want to understand how the notes from this chord are moving stepwise, or at least sort of a short direction to the next chord. So you want to understand how these two chords connect with voice leading. Be able to have an overview where you can just put all the notes together in the same octave, and then you can see how they're moving from one chord to the next. So that means that we have F, A, C and E, and then in the same octave, F stays the same, A is going down to A flat, C is going down to B, E is going down to D. So we have now this moving into this. And we also have the F and the D together in the chord, so we know that it's sort of a subdominant chord. At least that's really a hint at that this is probably a subdominant chord. And we also have an idea about how we transition from one chord to the next. And actually we also know how to go back because the third chord is an F major 7. So we can use this information when we're either playing chords or when we're soloing. Of course, if you're playing chords, you can just voice lead the chords. So you can play the F major 7 and then just change the notes that need to change. And then you're down on the diminished chord here and you can go back. But you can also use it when you're soloing because you can use the notes that are changing as target notes. So if I use the A flat on the B diminished as a target note, then I can play a melody on the F major 7 that's really pointing towards that A flat, and in that way have sort of a logical transition. So that would be something like this. And I can also target another note. If I target the B in the diminished chord, then I could have a line like this. So here I've added the entire diminished arpeggio. But I could have ended just on the B and it would have been just as clear. And of course, this is also true if you want to go from the diminished chord and then back to the F major 7. So transitioning from bar 2 to bar 3. So here I'm really targeting the A, the third of the F major 7, and that's really making it clear that we're going from this chord back to this one. Using this overview of the chord notes is really going to help you find those target notes that you can practice playing towards, and in that way play solos and make lines that really follow the harmony and follow the song. But you can actually use voice leading to something that's a lot more powerful as a melodic tool, and that's what I want to cover next. What you hear me doing in this solo is that I'm using motifs and I'm using voice leading to create those motifs. So what I'm doing is that I'm first just playing a short melody on the first chord, then I'm voice leading that to fit it onto the next chord and then continue working with this. Then I take the last part of the motif, turn that into another kind of melody, and then I voice lead that through a few changes. So this way of playing melodies, this way of connecting your different phrases in a solo is something that's extremely powerful, and that's also really the difference between a solo that's just something on this chord and something else on that chord, and more like a complete piece of music. This is also what you hear if you're listening to melodies. If you listen to the melody of I Remember You or the melody of Autumn Leaves, they are motifs that are voice-led or moved through the changes. And this is something that you want to practice, something that you want to keep in mind, something that you can really work on if you just slow things down, use voice leading, and then check out how to move a motif through a short chord progression. So you can work on this by trying to take the basic arpeggios and then try and voice lead them over the neck, and in that way use just a simple arpeggio as a motif. As you might notice, I've reduced the chords in the song a little bit down to the functions, and the reason why I'm doing that is just because I want to have a little bit less to think about. I don't want to think about the 2 chords when maybe the 5 chord is more important, or the 5 chord if the 2 chord is more important in a progression. So if we take the first chord as an F major 7, and we already figured out that the B diminished in the same octave would be this. And then of course if I voice lead that, then I go back to the same chord. Then we get an F7, so I've taken away the C minor 7, and that means that we have this. Moving to B flat major 7, so in the same octave that will give us this. And then usually you will have like a B flat minor, E flat 7, but here I'm reducing that just to a basic 4 minor chord, so a B flat minor 6, that would be this. And then it moves on to the 3, 6, 2, 5, that could be something like. So in that way, if you practice stuff like this, just try and explore. Then you can already hear how you can easily make that into music, and it kind of makes sense, even though I'm kind of coming more out of an arpeggio exercise than an actual motif, but it becomes a motif really easily. The solo that I play in the beginning of this section of the video is really just one motif, starting everything and then just naturally developing through actually becoming other motifs along the way. So I'm starting with this simple melody on the F major 7, it's really just the arpeggio, and then ending on the D here. And then I'm using that and voice leading that to the B diminished, and of course I'm doing that by just changing the A down to A flat and the C down to the B. So now I can play. And then I can repeat the original motif on the F major 7 when it goes back, but now I'm moving it to the second beat, not the first beat. And then on the F7, I'm taking the last part of the motif and then turning that into a new kind of melody. So. And then I'm repeating a part of that on the B flat major 7, but just voice leading that to B flat. So. and again voice leading that to B flat minor 6, resolving back to the 3 in the 3-6-2-5, and here we have this, which is really just an arpeggio or even a triad moving down and being voice led through the changes. So we have kind of a hint at the C major 7 here, and then C diminished, B flat on the G minor, and then a scale melody to end in the next A part. If you want to dig into some more concepts and some other ways of practicing that are really going to help you play solos that are not just sort of a fragment here and then a fragment there, but really connected things where there's like a longer story to your solo, then check out this video where I'm covering a few different concepts. I'm talking about motifs as well, but I'm also talking about call response and other ways of tying your solo together, and also how you can practice this, because these are really important things to have in your solo vocabulary so you don't sound like you're just copy pasting licks everywhere and not really making any sense.